Hey everybody! If you're like me, you probably have played many hours of Minecraft. But today, thanks to my sketchy chemistry knowledge, I'll show you how I made one of the coolest looking blocks in real life. As always, this is dangerous, it is not a guide, and you should not recreate what you're seeing in this video, as it is basically asking for trouble. This is a soul sand block. It is this tormented looking block you find in the nether, and the reason it's cool is that when you light it up, it gives a cool blue-green flame. So let's make it. In order to begin this journey, we need two things. We need sand and we need nope, not soul. We need sodium silicate, which, if you like it dangerous, I showed how to properly make in a previous video. For a test run, I went to those playgrounds where dogs poop and got myself some sand. Then I mixed in the sodium silicate. The reason it works is that sodium silicate acts as a binder. It slowly reacts with the CO2 in the air to go from liquid to solid, locking the grains of sand in place in the process. After pressing the mix in shape, I let it cure in the air, and this is what I got. I did two tests with different quantities of sodium silicate. While on the left it is very crumbly and has no strength, you can see that on the right it is quite hard and solid. Good. Now that we know how to cast sand into solid structures, we can move on to make molds that will give it the desired shape. Here we are in Blender, a free 3D software, and this is a cube. Great. In the Sculpting tab, you can add or remove depth to the cube, thus making shapes, as seen here. I then moved on and carved a couple faces on each face of the cube, resulting in this. Once our model cube was done, I then proceeded to make the mold that would fit around it. I made it in two parts, and I've added some little spikes and divots on each side to make it fit together. At first, I wanted to make a huge cube that would be nice and big. However, when seeing the printing time of the mold, I decided to go with something a bit more manageable. Then I just let the 3D printer do its thing, and many hours later, I was granted with two halves of a mold that would fit together nicely. I taped up the mold together, filled it with sand, weighted it, and then calculated the right amount of sodium silicate I should add. And now it was time to mix everything. Once it was all thoroughly mixed, I then started to fill the mold and packed it as much as I could. Given the thickness of the piece, I figured that if I had to wait for air to dry to the core, it would take ages. Therefore, I decided to speed up the process by adding some external CO2 in larger amounts. Plus, this also gave me a reason to play with CO2 and show you some cool things. In this box, I have placed 12 candles and then lit them up. Then I sprinkle some sodium bicarbonate around the candles. When in contact with acids, sodium bicarbonate releases copious amounts of CO2. So let's do that. Note that no liquid has been added directly on the candles, only around them. Since CO2 is heavier than air, it will just stay there and will be able to put out fires if you try to put it inside the box. This is the reason why some fire extinguishers use CO2. Knowing all this, I went back to the project. I took a bucket, put the mold inside it, added some acid, and then added some plastic wrap on top in order to limit the gas leaks. Then, I just sprinkled in some sodium bicarbonate. While this cures, let me show you another cool experiment. First, take a beaker and add some sodium silicate to it. Then, add some water to dilute it substantially. Then you'll need some copper sulfate, which I've showed how to sketchily make in a previous video. Just take a couple pieces and drop them into the solution. And wait. Over the course of several hours to days, you will see some blue protrusions growing out of the pieces, eventually resembling some organic structures. This is called the chemical garden experiment. It has nothing to do with our project besides using the same chemicals, but it looks cool. Meanwhile, our sand block has had ample time to cure, and it is now time to remove the mold. Except the mold doesn't want to come off. At all. And at some point, I understand why.
Oh, am I so really very stupid? Yes, I am.
Let me explain. In the mold, if you have pieces protruding this way, and also this way, it grabs onto the piece, and there is no way to move it in that direction. How surprising. Fortunately, after crushing my way through some of the details, I was eventually able to remove the mold.
I mean, you can see the faces though.
Now that we have freed our piece, we need to wash it a couple times. But why, you might ask? Well, because it is now full of sodium because of the sodium silicate, and if you try to add some fuel and light it up, it will give a very typical orange flame, which is cool, but not the look that we are going for in this case. Now, we take some copper sulfate and dissolve it in some methanol. Interestingly, you can see that while it is soluble in methanol, it is completely insoluble in ethanol, which is quite surprising considering how similar these two molecules are. But anyways. And now, just pour the methanol solution onto the block and light it up. While the flame burns blue at first due to the methanol, it quickly takes on a nice blue-green color due to the copper ions. That's cool. But it could be even cooler if you could share this video with a friend. If you don't have friends, I showed how to make some in a previous video. I found that it also works if you just stuff the top with some copper sulfate and then light it up with some methanol. Hey, if you want to see more video game props made into the real world like this one, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. Meanwhile, thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!